What's up in War Eagle War Rapport family? You got Ike Jones. We are back continuing our top 40 countdown. This time, we're going to drop 8 of them on you today. Let's get straight into it. Y'all know how we do right here, War Rapport style. Let's drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Rapport. Drop.
Morning drop. It is Monday, July the 28th. We are here doing a little PFF countdown, back to it. As always, the morning drop is brought to you by the good folks over at the Rogue Shop. Make sure you hit them up at rogueshop.com. Code Rapport for America's #1 online dispensary, whether that's sleep, stress, pain, anxiety, relief. Rogue Shop's got something there for you. Use code Rapport again to get 15% off at America's #1 online dispensary. That is the Rogue Shop, and we appreciate them for continuing to support the work we do here at the War Rapport. We thank you for jumping in here with us today. Listen, we're going to get back into our countdown. I've been gone for a couple of weeks between SEC media days and trying to get back into the flow of things. I've missed a couple of them, so I'm doubling up today. I normally do 4. Today, we are going to do 8. Going to try to get through these in short order, but we will kick off today where we left off, and we are going to start with number 24 on the countdown, and that is none other than the man Dillon Wade, the offensive lineman who came over to Auburn as a transfer from Tulsa. If you all remember, he initially came over a couple of seasons ago as a transfer again from Tulsa, and has started as an offensive tackle, now moved into an offensive guard position. But Dillon Wade is number 24 on our countdown, and Wade comes in with 751 snaps last season, 67.1 overall, according to PFF, a 62.4 on a pass blocking grade, and run blocking a 70.7. Prolific run blocker there. Dillon Wade had 4 penalties last season, but Dillon Wade filled in admirably in the absence of an interior presence there with experience. Dillon Wade was able to come in and provide some additional depth there on the interior of the offensive line for Auburn. Now, he played, again, most of his snaps last year at guard, but he did have to play some tackle towards the end of the season because of some injuries and some inability there for the tackle. So, he spent the last 6 games last season at left tackle. He played a little bit of right tackle versus New Mexico early in the season. So he really only played 5 games at guard last year. But those were some of his better games on the season when he was playing at guard. But Dillon Wade is number 24 on our list here. And he's a guy who, when he came into Auburn from Tulsa, had some really great aspirations of being able to play the position at an SEC level. And I think he had a good year 1 in his initial season at the tackle position. But he, again, from a size perspective, he's a guy 6'4", 303. He just fits better in the mold of an interior offensive lineman just because he doesn't have that height and the long arms to be able to reach some of those pass rush guys that are out there. So, hopefully an entire season, because of the additional depth that Auburn does have now at the tackle position for Dillon Wade as an interior offensive lineman, him going into his final year of eligibility, he'll be able to do all of the things he needs to do to put the kind of tape that will allow him to be able to make an NFL roster. I do believe that Dillon Wade has NFL ability, and his versatility of being able to play all along the offensive line is going to be attractive to teams that want to be able to plug and play, or not necessarily plug and play, but have someone along that offensive line that they can move around to different places and be able to have some versatility as a swing guy there along the offensive line. That's what he's been able to do in his collegiate career now, showing that at Auburn, and hopefully he'll be able to continue to bolster his tape on as an interior offensive lineman this season. His worst game last year, according to PFF with the rankings here, was against Texas A&M, where he was a 48.3 rated player there. He gave up 1 hurry and 1 pressure in that game. On the season, he gave up 15 hurries and 20 pressures, 3 sacks, and 2 hits. Again, in 751 snaps. It's not terrible, right? Like, his rate of pressure is not high, but that is something that he's going to need to be able to try to get better at. But again, a lot of that was when he was playing at the tackle position, where that's not necessarily the most natural fit, even though it's a place that he has played the vast majority of his career. But looking forward to Dillon Wade taking that next step as an interior guard this season for Auburn to solidify that offensive line for Auburn coming into this one. Next up on our list is number 23, and that is young Malik Blocton, the sophomore defensive lineman playing defensive tackle for Auburn. Looking for a season where Malik can continue to step up and be a guy that Auburn can trust along that defensive front. When you look at his numbers here from PFF, you see he had 305 total snaps last season, 67.4 overall rating with a run defensive grade of 71.4, tackling grade of 52.6. We'll take a look at that tackling number here in just a minute, and 60.4 pressure rate. So a good ability to be an interior pressure guy for Auburn last season. And that's good to pair with a guy like Keldrick Falk, who's going to be an exterior threat to be able to rush the passer. You want to be able to have somebody on the interior as well who can get out there and really cause some havoc if Keldrick Falk's going to be double team, etc. But it's talked about the tackling number. He only had 3 missed tackles last season, but it was the opportunities in those games that drug the score down were the ones that really hurt him, right? You look at the Missouri game, he really only had 1 opportunity and he missed it. He had some opportunities there in the A&M game. He had 1 missed tackle there and then another missed tackle in the Alabama game. But overall, he had good scores for the vast majority of games that he was in there, playing a lot of snaps for Auburn last season as a true freshman. Again, expecting him to step up a little bit more this year. His pressure rate was high. He had 7 total pressures with 3 sacks and 4 hurries last year. And looking for him to be a double-digit pressure guy this year, looking to get to 5, maybe 7 sacks this year as an interior guy as they start to try to put a lot of focus on Malik Blocton, and Auburn can continue to be good on first and second down from a run defensive perspective. He was good for the vast majority of the season, solid to good for the vast majority of the season. So in a second year now for Malik Blocton, look for him to take that next step and be another guy along that defensive front that can cause havoc for Auburn. Let's step it forward here and go to our number 22 on the list, and that is Robert Woodyard. We're actually going to have a pair of linebackers back-to-back in these last couple here in the first half. Robert Woodyard, number 22 on the list coming in, and he is a guy who has not had a ton of opportunities, but, somebody who, when he came out of high school, was really a big flip over to Auburn. 118 snaps last year at a 67.4 PFF rating. And run defense, he was a 69.5, and he was 64.6 in the tackle rating, 59.5 in a pressure rating, and coverage rating of 63.2. Robert Woodyard, again, not playing a whole lot of snaps, but when he got in there, effective for being able to be in there for that short amount of time. He was a guy last year who was able to get 16 total tackles, with 3 of those being assisted tackles, missed 4 tackles on the season. Worst game being against Oklahoma last year, PFF rating of 46.8 in that game. He missed a tackle. He had 2 missed tackles versus Alabama A&M, and then another missed tackle versus Louisiana Monroe. Best game of the season for him last year was that Louisiana Monroe game, though. Best P5 contest in which he was in would have been Arkansas. It looks as if did not have a great game versus Alabama. It looks on the limited snaps he was in there, but it would have been Arkansas. Only played 9 snaps in that game, but a 62.7 overall rating. Really good against the run and good tackling rating there in that game. But Robert Woodyard's a guy who's got an opportunity this year to play a ton of snaps on the interior of that defense as a linebacker. Just from the experience in the system and his ability to really be a sideline linebacker, you need to have somebody to pair with a guy like DeMarcus Riddick, who's going to be a great will linebacker. And but you need that middle linebacker presence as well. I think that, man, Robert Woodyard, and when you think about the athleticism, a guy 6'2", 228, kind of slim there on the interior, but definitely can move. And then if you look at just kind of his ability to tackle there on the interior, if you pair him with a DeMarcus Riddick at your linebacking core, you've got 2 really athletic athletically gifted guys who can fly. Robert Woodyard lost some weight to be able to slim down, was really looking like a box safety out there a little bit last year, but actually has the stout ability to be able to withstand the stuff there on the interior. I think Robert Woodyard has a good opportunity this season to be a guy for Auburn who can provide a lot of athleticism from that interior linebacker spot. So looking forward to seeing the progression from Robert Woodyard this year. As far as the pressure rate last year, only 2 pressures, no sacks, and a hit and a hurry are the 2 pressures that he had last year. So wasn't really asked to do that, not really his role, but a guy who can, against some of the more mobile quarterbacks in this league, I think Robert Woodyard could pay some really good dividends for Auburn next season. All right. Moving right along to the next one on our list. Like I said, we're going to try to get to 8 today. The number 4 here on that list is Caleb Wheaton. I told you we had a pair of linebackers coming up. Caleb Wheaton is the other linebacker that we have. The transfer over from Maryland. Played 466 snaps last year for Maryland. A guy who is familiar with the defensive coordinator. So, I had him pegged as the interior guy that was going to play there at the Mike linebacker. With the experience that he has, the most snaps of any of the linebackers in the room, 67.5 overall rating, according to PFF, 55.3 against the run, not looking great there on his run defense, and the tackling at 36.0 is not good. But what he does well is being able to pressure, and he's able to cover well. When I look at these grades, it makes me want to change what I think my prediction might be for how Caleb Wheaton is going to be utilized. Maybe Robert Woodyard is going to be your first and second down guy, and Wheaton's going to be a sub package guy who's able to rush the quarterback or play in coverage or play spy activities. He's a 6'1", 227 guy who is able to looks like really cover really well. But when I look at these rush grades, his grades against the run, him having a 55.3 and then his tackling rating at 36 is not good. I mean, he had an awful game here versus Iowa where he had 3 missed tackles. He had 3 missed tackles versus Michigan State, another 2 missed tackles versus Indiana. He had a total of 15 missed tackles last season. Now, he had a total of 25 tackles on the year, but 15 missed opportunities for tackles there for Wheaton. Definitely needs to be able to improve that in order to be an every down linebacker in the SEC, especially if his run grade is not going to be great. Now, he had good run grades versus teams like Virginia, Villanova, Northwestern, USC, and Rutgers last year, but that's really kind of the bottom half of that schedule for them. When you're talking about teams who run the ball a lot, like UConn, who there is a transfer, of course, from UConn from that running back room, didn't have a good run grade. Michigan State did not play well against the run in that great game as far as the grading is concerned. Minnesota, a team that's going to be physical and run a lot, a low grade on that one. And then Iowa, a smash mouth team, had a run low grade on that one. So he's going to have to be able to play against the run better than he did last season for sure. Again, if that's going to, if Woodyard's going to be more of a run stopper guy for Auburn, and you've got a guy like Caleb Wheaton who's going to be out there, who's going to be more of a guy who you can put in on, third and long, third and medium situations where you need someone to be able to effectively cover a running back or tight end, and then be able to go get after a mobile quarterback. Then, maybe Wheaton's going to be a guy who can do that. Again, a good pressure rate there for him. 72.2 is the grading there. And his ability to be able to pressure and be in that sub package, maybe that's a better thing for him to be able to fill in for Auburn in those sorts of situations. So, listen, Auburn needed it last year, right? Like they just were not in position and not able to get those third and long stops. A guy like Wheaton maybe can come and shore up that third down defense for Auburn this season. So definitely looking forward to seeing how DJ Durkin decides to deploy Wheaton, a guy who he recruited out of high school, brought over out of the transfer portal. What's going to be his role? If the numbers tell the story from PFF, third down stopper is where he's going to come in and try to be that guy for Auburn. And again, it's a place where Auburn definitely needs it. Once again, the morning drop is brought to you by the good folks at Rogue Shop. Head over to rogueshop.com. Use code RAPPORT when you do get 15% off at America's #1 online dispensary. That is the Rogue Shop. Let's continue down the countdown. We got through the first half of this, those first 4. And we're going to get into the next half and we're going to get into a guy who Auburn fans definitely want to see have a breakout season, and that is the guy in the person of Cam Coleman. We are into the top 20 now. Cam Coleman is number 20 on the list for Auburn this year. And again, he's the guy that people want to see have a breakout season. Going into his sophomore season last year, as a true freshman, 551 snaps, was rated a 68.3 overall by PFF, 69.3 as a receiver. His drop rate, 69.1, or drop grade at 69.1. Run blocking is really the big issue there for, listen, they didn't bring him in to be a run blocker, but he needs to be someone who can block on the exterior for any of the guys if they're going to be running some of that quick game and trying to run the little tunnel screens, anything of that nature. You got to have wide receivers who can block out there. Cam Coleman needs to be able to be that kind of guy for Auburn, and hopefully that is what he can help to do to get guys like Eric Singleton, loose around the outside. If they're going to be running jet sweeps and anything like that, he needs to be able to run block a little bit better than that. Now, the knock on Cam Coleman last year was the drops, right? Like you saw the drop, he 69.1 overall, which actually isn't terrible. He for all of the things that people talked about with the drops for Cam Coleman, he had three. He had three last year. Number of targets last year were 54. So he had 54 targets, with three of those being drops, 37 overall receptions. So I think that, again, early in the season, that was a narrative that was going around. It's like, oh, he's got butterfingers. He's not able to catch the ball. He didn't have a single drop after he came back from the shoulder injury after that Oklahoma game. No drop for the remainder of that season. And that's when he got the vast majority of his targets and catches, was in that second half of the year, right? So you get to he had 6 targets in that Oklahoma game, again, with 1 drop. But then he has games later in the year: Kentucky 4, Vanderbilt 3, and this number of targets I'm counting on here. Louisiana Monroe 8, Texas A&M 9, Alabama 8. So like he had the vast majority of his targets in the back half of the year, 0 drops in that time. So I think maybe that's a little bit of an overblown narrative about Cam Coleman. And we're looking forward to seeing what a year 2 of Cam Coleman looks like. Again, 37 receptions last year for 598 yards. And he was a guy who was able to get out there and really put pressure on defenses because of the litany of ways that he'd be able to attack you, right? Like, he's a big, strong receiver that you really don't want to play a lot of press against, because if he gets by you, he's got the long speed to be able to run it over the top. He's got the ability to do the contested catch stuff. So playing physical with him at the top of the break is not an easy proposition. And he's got some quickness to him to be able to make you miss in the open field. So Cam Coleman is definitely going to be a weapon for this Auburn team going into this year. Expecting big things for Cam Coleman in year 2. Coming in at number 19 on the list, we've got Zeke Walker, the veteran defensive lineman for Auburn, who has really been one of the more stable pieces for a team that has been in flux for the last few years. He's a guy who stuck around and really just kind of waited his turn, waited throughout the process. Last year, didn't have a ton of snaps. Again, 147 snaps for Walker, and he had a 69.2 overall rating according to PFF, a run grade of 73.7, tackling grade of 69.0. And he's a guy who, again, he's just been here at Auburn for a while. His pressure rating of 56.2 is not, anything to write home about, but definitely good enough to keep him on the field a little bit more coming into this year. But he is the number 19 rated player here. Stats for last year, no sacks, but did have 7 QB hurries last year, 8 total tackles in his 147 total snaps. But solid across the board. Zeke Walker has been a guy who highly rated coming out of high school, just never really found his footing with Auburn early, but stuck around. And hopefully this is going to be a year where, because Auburn has a lot of youth up front, we already talked about Malik Blocton, the true sophomore. He's going to be playing that defensive tackle position and needs to be able to rotate in there with Malik Blocton to be able to provide Auburn with a good, solid interior rotation of defensive players up front. Zeke Walker is important to the ability for Auburn at defensive tackle to be solid. 6'4", 294 guy. He can play the defensive end a little bit as well, but he's going to need to be able to really slide in and be a little bit D tackle this year. He played a lot of defensive end though in these last season. Most of his snaps came, actually I think all of his snaps came as a defensive end last year. So he was rotating a little bit with Keldrick Falk, and Keldrick Falk played too many, I think, snaps in some games, so he needs to be able to rotate out and get his opportunities to get in. Zeke Walker needs to prove that he can be a guy out there, particularly on early downs, to be able to rotate in for Falk and play solid against the run, which he was solid last season against the run. Again, as far as missed tackles, he only had one last year. That was in the Arkansas game. Didn't have a lot of tackling opportunities. That was the only tackle he had a chance to get, and he didn't get it. But again, a guy who needs to be able to rotate in and play really well in this last year here for Auburn in order for them to have the kind of defensive performances that Auburn can have. You need guys like Zeke Walker to be out there and be effective in the snaps that they are going to have. Next up on the list, coming in at number 18, is Kayden Lee, who is now moving into his junior season as a defensive back for Auburn. Kayden Lee has been a solid contributor in his first 2 years at Auburn. 643 snaps last year for Kayden Lee. When Kayin came into Auburn, he played as a true freshman, and he was effective as a true freshman. He's 5'11", 178. So shorter cornerback, but competes really well. He's a guy that may even move in to be a slot corner if one of those guys like Rayon Schrader comes in and proves that he can be a starter out there. Champ Anthony's going to be coming back for this team this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Auburn decides to use Kayden Lee this year, whether it be like a nickel back or whatever. He can still play the outside corner. Not saying that that's definitely going to be a move for him, but he's a guy I think that plays really well. If you look at the numbers here, 69.4 overall, according to PFF, 63 overall on run defense, 64.8 tackling, 71.8 pressure, and 69.1 in coverage, right? So he's a guy, in my opinion, that can do a lot of the things that Keontae Scott could do for you in being able to go and get after the quarterback in obvious passing situations. If they're going to play more nickel or dime and have him in there on the interior. And he's a guy who plays well against the run on the inside. I'm looking forward to seeing how this coaching staff decides to use Kayden Lee this year, because there's so much talent on the outside. How are they going to rotate those guys on the outside? Or are they going to try to keep Lee on the field a little bit more and move him inside some of those times? I don't know, but I think that when I look kind of forward project to what he will likely be doing in the NFL, I do think he needs to get some slot corner snaps here in his money year, in the third year here at Auburn, because his draft eligibility is going to be something that's going to be on the line here for Auburn. So again, coming into that third season, he wants to be able to be a guy who's up high on NFL draft boards. And I think he projects a little bit better on the interior of a defense than he does on the exterior because of the size of the height. The NFL prototype, they're looking for those longer DBs on the outside now. Kayden Lee competes as well as anybody does on the outside, though. Last year, in his 365 snaps, he was able to get one hurry out there, 29 total tackles though on the season, had 6 missed tackles on the year, did not have a game with multiple missed tackles, but he is going to be a guy who needs to really sharpen up his ability to play in coverage. I think the only thing that I looked at when I was looking at kind of at Kayden Lee's numbers of things of like, okay, this is where he needs to get better, is he was targeted 49 times last year. 23 of those times resulted in receptions for 46.9 rates in coverage. He needs to be able to do better than that in coverage. As far as touchdowns scored on him, only 1 touchdown, but he was able to get 2 interceptions last year. So 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups. So Kayden Lee, again, a guy who competes really well on the outside. Hopefully nothing I'm saying makes it sound like I don't believe Kayden Lee is a solid corner. He's a guy who was voted as a preseason all-SEC guy, and I think that he is going to be that caliber of a defensive player for Auburn again this season, and hopefully he's ready to take that next evolutionary step in a defense that potentially will be better up front. It'll allow him some more abilities to be able to be more disruptive on the back end, whether that is pass breakups or interceptions coming into this season. So looking forward to seeing Kayden Lee take that next step. Last year he had 2 interceptions. If he can double that number in this season, that'd be amazing. He had a third opportunity last year that was kind of a golden one versus Cal, no pun intended. Need to be able to take advantage of that. But again, looking forward to a solid year for Kayden Lee again for the Auburn Tigers. Last one we're going to go at today is the transfer over from Virginia Tech, the offensive tackle, much needed and hopefully much better than the last transfer offensive tackle that Auburn had coming in. And that's Xavier Chaplain, again, transfer over from Virginia Tech. When you look at the numbers for Xavier Chaplain, Big X, so I don't keep stumbling over his first name. You see a guy who played 607 snaps for Virginia Tech last season, was rated 69.9 overall by PFF, and he had a run blocking grade of 70.4, pass blocking of 72.8, with 7 penalties on the season last year. But he was a guy who was absolutely solid for Virginia Tech, one of the highest rated offensive linemen in the transfer portal coming into this offseason. He played immaculately for Virginia Tech. When I look at his blocking grades here, again, you're talking about a guy rated 70.4 in the run game, 72.8 in the pass game. He gave up the most pressures, or the worst game he had as a pass blocker was against Marshall, of all teams, last year, where he had give it 4 hurries and 5 pressures. He only surrendered 2 sacks on the entirety of the season, though, and 607 blocking opportunities that he had out there. 2 sacks surrendered all of last year. So again, a guy, he gave up 11 hurries and 13 pressures, but he had a really mobile quarterback back there as well at Virginia Tech, so they were able to kind of get out of some of those situations. But again, a very highly rated offensive tackle. Something that Auburn has needed for a while is who's going to be booking in this offensive line. You got Chaplin coming in on one side, and you got Tall, who was good in spots for Auburn last year. Mason Murphy also in there to be on the other side, and you've got Tyler Johnson, who can potentially be there. But you need Chaplin to be as advertised this year for Auburn, to have the confidence that you need for your quarterback in Jackson Arnold to be able to be back there in the pocket and delivering the ball with some accuracy and with some confidence, of not feeling like he's going to get tattooed every other play like he was at Oklahoma. Xavier Chaplain, a huge piece to that puzzle for Jackson Arnold and Auburn University going into this year. Overall, last year, his worst graded game, according to PFF, was the Virginia Tech game, where he had 1 hurry and 2 pressures given up, as well as a sack in that game. So he pass blocking grade was a 52.6. Run blocking still solid. He didn't have any run blocking situations that were sub 58, it looks like here. Rutgers being the lone one that was 58.9. But, oh, excuse me, I take that back. Clemson game 52.4. But Clemson, really good defense last year. He played really great as a pass blocker. He's 74.0 in that game in pass blocking. So, and they've got some tremendous rush ends there for Clemson. So again, Xavier Chaplain, very solid offensive tackle pickup for Auburn. He's a guy who should be he was, rated by the media to be a 3rd team all SEC guy coming in. And I think that he's going to be a guy who will end up in the postseason being an all SEC caliber offensive lineman for Auburn going into this year. Looking forward to seeing what this year looks like for Xavier Chaplain as he goes into his final season. Didn't give the measurables on him, but 6'7", 338. So when you look at a guy like Dillon Wade, who I mentioned earlier, 303, 6'4" guy, right, versus a 6'7", 338, you see the difference in the size of a guy who plays along the exterior, and what that looks like in translating to the next level, and why Chaplin is going to be a great complement to now what Dillon Wade can do there on the interior. A guy like Connor Lew on the interior, Jeremiah Wright, who we've already had on our countdown on the interior, and one of those guys being Mason Murphy or Tall Miller on the other side on the offensive line. So Xavier Chaplain rounds us out for today, and that's it, man. That's it for us here today, talking a little bit more about the countdown. We are getting down to the nitty gritty. We are going to be getting in. We're already inside of our top 20. So, we've got some dynamic playmakers still left here on the list. Before you get out of here, make sure you're doing the necessary. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the content with somebody. I will be back at you guys with more great War Rapport content later. But until then, and as always, War Eagle, perch.